So picture this. It's the late 19th century. Science and religion are at war, and it feels like you have to pick a side. But what if there was a third option? That's exactly what we're talking about today. The story of the Theosophical Society, a movement that totally tried to rewire how we think about spirituality itself. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1875. You've got Darwin's new theory shaking everything people thought they knew about creation. The church is digging in its heels. And with all the industrialization, a lot of people just feel lost. They were searching for answers, real answers, that you couldn't find in a church pew or in a science lab. And into that void, this radical new idea was born.
And it all starts with the name, Theosophy. It literally means divine wisdom. Now, the founders weren't saying, hey, we've invented something new. Not at all. For them, they were just reviving something ancient, a universal wisdom religion that they believed was the original source code for every single faith and philosophy on the planet.
So, that brings us to the actual founding, in New York City, November 17, 1875. It was just a small group of people who had this wild idea that they could actually build a bridge between science and spirituality, between East and West.
You know, the Society's incredible success really comes down to this trio of founders. It was like the perfect team-up. You had Helena Blavatsky, this incredibly charismatic Russian mystic. She was the visionary, the one bringing the big ideas. Then there's Henry Steel Olcott, a down-to-earth American Civil War vet who knew how to build an organization. And finally, William Quan Judge, a lawyer who was the master organizer in the U.S. It was the perfect storm, really. The dreamer, the builder, and the organizer.
And this is what they were all about. These weren't just fuzzy feelings. They were a mission statement. And think about it. In an age of colonialism and super rigid social classes, that first point was absolutely revolutionary. Universal brotherhood, without any distinctions, that was huge. Plus, they wanted to study all religions as equals and actually investigate stuff like psychic powers, the exact things both science and religion wanted to sweep under the rug.
Okay, so starting with those big goals, they built a philosophy. And when I say big, I mean it's one of the most sprawling, complex cosmologies ever put to paper. Let's take a look.
In 1888, Blavatsky drops her masterpiece, The Secret Doctrine. And this thing is a beast. It's split into two huge parts. The first, cosmogenesis, is basically the birth of the universe. It imagines the cosmos breathing in and out of existence over these vast cycles of time. The second part, anthropogenesis, is the birth of us. It lays out this wild spiritual evolution, saying humanity evolves through 7 major root races, starting as pure spirit, becoming physical, and then heading back to a spiritual state again.
Now, we have to talk about something here, because this is super important. The book talks about a 5th Aryan, root race, and that word, it sets off alarm bells, for good reason. But in their system, it was purely an anthropological term. Remember their #1 goal, universal brotherhood. It's the complete opposite of the racial supremacy ideas that horribly co-opted that word later on. So context is absolutely everything here. So this incredibly detailed philosophy didn't just sit in some dusty library. No way. The Theosophical Society just exploded onto the world stage. And with that global impact came a whole lot of internal drama. Man, their history was a total roller coaster. They moved to India, which they see as the spiritual home of their teachings, and they're a huge hit there, helping to spark a revival of Hinduism and Buddhism. But then, bam, they get hit with major scandals, like the Hodgson Report, which basically called Blavatsky a complete fraud. After she died, the power struggles got so bad that the entire American section just broke away. But the most unbelievable moment, the biggest crisis of all, came in 1929. See, for years, the Society had been grooming this young Indian boy, Jiddu Krishnamurti. He was supposed to be the next world teacher, a new messiah. They built a whole global organization just for him. And then he gets up on stage and, in this stunning speech, completely rejects the whole thing. He dissolves the organization and says, "Truth is a pathless land. You can't put it in a box." It was a moment that sent shockwaves through the entire spiritual world. You'd think that would be the end of the story, right? A spectacular flameout. But here's the crazy thing. It wasn't. Despite all the scandals and splits, the Society's ideas started quietly leaking into the culture, and they're still with us today in ways you probably don't even realize. For instance, the whole movement of abstract art, it owes a huge debt to Theosophy. You have artists like Wassily Kandinsky and Pete Mondrian who were just soaked in these ideas. They thought the job of an artist wasn't to paint a tree to look like a tree, but to paint the invisible spiritual reality behind the tree. All those famous grids Mondrian painted, that was his attempt to show the cosmic balance between spirit and matter. Even the great poet W.B. Yeats used their ideas about historical cycles. So what about today? Well, have you ever heard of karma, or reincarnation, or the idea of ascended masters guiding humanity? All of these concepts, which feel so mainstream now, were largely popularized in the West by the Theosophical Society. In a lot of ways, they wrote the dictionary for the New Age movement and that whole spiritual but not religious idea that is so popular today.
Now here's the kicker. The society itself, it's pretty small today, only about 30,000 members around the world. But as we've seen, its real impact isn't about membership numbers. It's about how deeply its ideas have woven themselves into our culture.
Which really just leaves us with this one big question to think about. The Theosophical Society started out trying to solve a 19th century crisis of faith. But in the process, is it possible they actually built the framework, the spiritual grammar that we all use today in our own very modern search for meaning? The evidence suggests they were a whole lot more successful than they ever could have imagined.